Hi guys, this is gsno.com and I'm here with the Xiaomi Redmi Note 90 for a full review. This is one of the most affordable budget phones with 5G on the market. It was launched in January 2021, so it's as fresh as they get, and it comes with a MediaTek Dimensity CPU inside, which is something you don't see every day on a €229 phone, or better said, a $240 or $250 handset. So, budget phone with 5G, a triple camera, and I would say a reasonably large screen. Let's check it out. Okay, so first of all, measurements. It measures 9.1 millimeters in thickness and weighs almost 200 grams, or better said 199 grams. It's obviously made of plastic, but it has a pretty grippy backside, as you can see here, and the camera design reminds me quite a bit of the Xiaomi Mi 10T Lite or the Poco X3, for example. Now, it's also, I would say, reasonably easy to use with a single hand. As you can see right here, it's got pretty large bezels, and also large is the punch hole for the selfie camera. It feels like it's pretty well built, not the best built in the world, but pretty well built for a plastic phone. The buttons on the side are pretty comfy, and we got a flat one which integrates the fingerprint scanner. Now, moving forward, let's talk about the screen. The display you're seeing here is an IPS LCD with a diagonal of 6.53 inches and a resolution of 2340 over 1080 pixels. It has Gorilla Glass 5 protection, and as usual, I'm going to put it to the test using our typical YouTube video, which looks something like this. Okay, so we zoomed into the image, and as you can see, the punch hole is rather big, but it may not be as distracting as it would have been in the center of the screen. Now, the colors are pretty well calibrated, pretty realistic, I'll give you that, but when you watch the device from an angle, it may get a weird purple tint. Now, the view angles are pretty wide, but you're losing some of the color calibration and things will look a bit, well, as I said before, they will get a purple tint. The brightness is okay indoors, not so much outdoors, and the blacks aren't very deep. Pixels have an RGB stripes arrangement, and we also did some measurements here. We started off with the brightness. This is what we achieved, 365 lux. Usually it takes 400 lux for us to be totally happy, but I have to say that even in outdoor usage, the screen was still visible in spite of not having 400 lux. With this value, we're above the OnePlus Nord N10 5G and above the Huawei P Smart 2021, but below the Huawei P40 Lite 5G and the Moto G 5G. Now we go further and we go inside the phone. Inside it, you can find a new CPU for us. It's the first time that we're meeting with a MediaTek Dimensity processor. It's actually the MediaTek Dimensity 800U 5G, in spite of what it says here. It's a 7nm octa-core chip accompanied by 4 gigs of RAM and either 64 or 128 gigabytes of storage. We have the 128 gig version, luckily, plus microSD. The good news is that this is a pretty quality MediaTek CPU, and it also can run any game out there, which for $250 is pretty fine. Now, if you're wondering about the benchmarks, I'm pretty sure you're curious, especially since once again it's our first contact with this type of MediaTek processor. In Antutu 8, as you can see, we scored past the Redmi Note 9 Pro and also the more expensive LG Velvet, so in some tests we're beating the Snapdragon 765. We're still below the Realme 6 and the OnePlus Nord N10 5G, and when it comes to Geekbench 5 multi-core, we're above the Oppo Reno 3 Pro 5G and the Reno 4 Pro 5G, which is a bit of a shock. At the same time, we surpassed the Poco X3 NFC and the Moto Razr 5G, which is much more expensive. Still, we're below the Xiaomi Mi 10 Lite 5G and the Moto G 5G Plus. Now, 3D Mark, those benchmarks wouldn't run on this device, but we have others like Benchmark OS 2. But as you can see, we're beating the OnePlus Nord N10 5G, one of the nemesis of this handset. Overall, not a bad performance. We're definitely defeating handsets which are 3 times pricier. Now, when it comes to the temperature, you're probably wondering if there's any overheating. No trace of that. So in benchmarks, we got up to 31 degrees Celsius, which is a very cool temperature to achieve, and in games 35.2. Definitely no overheating here. Now, as far as the battery is concerned, I feel that I should check the specs here. So let's check it out. On the battery front, what we're getting is a lithium polymer 5000 mAh battery which charges at 18 watts. Now in our tests, we achieved for the video playback 14 hours and 52 minutes, which would be okay if Xiaomi wouldn't have accustomed us to much higher values. Okay, so here we are with this value here, 14 hours and 52 minutes. It goes above the Oppo Reno 4 Lite. It goes also above the OnePlus Nord N10 5G, but we stayed below the biggest rival, the Motorola Moto G 5G, and also the Poco X3 NFC. The result in continuous usage in PC Mark is much better, as you can see, almost cracking top 20. This is 14 hours and 39 minutes, which means we're superior to the Poco, also to the Poco X3, of course. We're superior to the Poco M3, Galaxy A71, the Moto G9 Plus, and Moto G 5G Plus. We scored below the Motorola Moto G 5G and the Xiaomi Mi 10 Lite 5G. Okay, so there aren't many phones to compare with this one. Just remember these names: Motorola Moto G 5G, similar price tag; OnePlus Nord N10 5G, getting a bit cheaper and also similar price tag; and on some level the Xiaomi Mi 10T Lite. When it comes to charging, I'm not that impressed. It takes 2 hours and 10 minutes to charge up the phone fully, and after 30 minutes you're at about 28%. While after 1 hour, let's see what we got here. After 1 hour, we're at 59%, so definitely could be slightly better when it comes to the charging. Now, proceeding further, we're met with a surprise. We also have here an audio jack and a set of stereo speakers. One's at the bottom and the other one's at the top. The earpiece doubles as your music playing speaker. Now, the actual experience will be served when playing this clip here. Okay, so it's definitely the bottom speaker that's doing the heavy lifting in the bass department. We don't have that much bass. The volume is, I would say, pretty good. Not record setting, but still pretty decent. Some nice high notes in there, a pretty way of rendering the voice, and I'm overall pretty happy with what we achieved here. Once again, not much of a bass. The options include some profiles, some hi-fi audio, equalizer, but most of them are triggered only when you connect headphones. This is the power of the volume that we measure with a decibel meter: 93.8 decibels at the bottom and 87.2 decibels at the top. Those are pretty solid values, top 10 material. The stereophony is real here, so that's good news. And with the bottom value, which is a bit of a record compared to anything I've tested recently, we surpassed the Poco X3 and the Huawei P40 Lite 5G, to name just two of them. Not as impressive in the gaming, 95.5 decibels. There are hundreds of phones which achieve 100 decibels nowadays. But at least we beat something like the LG Velvet, which is much pricier, but we scored below the eternal rival Moto G 5G. Okay, we're done with the acoustics, time to talk about the camera, and as you can see we have here a punch hole in which rests a 13 megapixel shooter. It fooled me for a bit there, so 13 megapixel shooter for the selfies, while at the back side the package sounds very similar to the recently tested Poco M3. That's because it's a triple combo: 48 megapixel main camera with a Samsung sensor, the same sensor from the Poco M3 by the way, and also found on the Oppo A93, the Redmi Note 8T, Galaxy A90 5G, so it's a very used sensor. There are dozens of phones with the Samsung sensor on board. So 48 megapixels and the 2 megapixel cameras, there are two of them, one for bokeh, one for macro. Unlike the Poco M3, this device can actually shoot 4K videos, possibly on account of the CPU, which is doing the heavy lifting in the processing department. It has all the cool bells and whistles. I'm talking about portrait, night mode, 48 megapixel shots in full, macro, and so forth. Let's skip straight to the gallery because we have quite a few photos here. We'll go to albums, camera. We surpassed 200, and first of all I'm going to show you those taken during the day. It was a pretty cloudy day. Okay, so as I said, it was a pretty cloudy day, and the camera had to always compensate for the gray sky, and it constantly made it white. However, I'm pretty happy with the color calibration. That's one thing that really got to me. when we took those shots. So the colors are spot on, and when you're activating the whole AI and HDR bells and whistles, the colors may be a bit deformed, they may be a bit too intense and too vivid. But once again, everything's to my liking. This is a regular shot in a cloudy day, but if you activate the AI and HDR, this is the result. It feels like you're using the flash when you're actually not. Okay, so some attempts here at close-ups and macros, not very successful. Actually, the most successful ones are the regular camera ones, the close-ups with the main camera, while macros will take a bit of work. And I'm pretty impressed by the resilience of the roses being alive in February, after so many months of snow and, well, cold weather. Okay, getting past that, let's go to a more colorful area here with graffiti. Once again, everything is, well, pumped up by the AI and HDR. I suggest you keep them deactivated if you want to take more realistic shots. If you want to take shots that pop out, like you're using as if you're using a Samsung or iPhone, you can activate AI and Auto HDR. One thing that I notice here is that the noise is not that present, so the details are quite fine and the focus was also spot on. So you're going to see a lot of small details. You're going to notice them. Spots, stains, rust on these toys, which have been in use for many years. Once again, attempts at creating a proper macro, but not the best in the world. Pretty impressed by the colors again. So this is the keyword for all the photos I've taken during the day, colors. And also details in some manner or other. Okay, bokeh is also spot on, so that sensor delivers a pretty nice experience of separating an object or a subject, a person, from its background. And this is the first set of selfies, which is not very impressive because there are beauty options here and they make the face look like a doll face. They clear up all the defects, but at least the bokeh shots properly separate me from my background and also highlight facial texture, especially the beard. Some landscape shots here and there, especially the ones with birds. And once again, the word details pops out, and things are not bad at all. Several more colorful toys, and of course, several more bokeh shots of these toys. And the second area of selfies, which I promised you, is this one here. This time we're not applying effects anymore. These are not the most detailed selfies I've taken recently. You cannot see the pores of the skin as some other cameras do, but I'm pretty happy with the I would say focus, clarity and colors achieved here, although once again not a landmark. So in the end, I feel that this is pretty close to the phones I've tested recently. It's definitely superior to the Poco M3. It's pretty close to the Moto G5G and maybe also to the Motorola Moto G Pro. Those are just some examples. You can definitely compare it with the Galaxy A31, maybe A41. However, we are lacking telephoto, so no zoom. We're lacking ultra wide, so that's a minus, and also the macro camera isn't that impressive. Now let's go to the low light shots. Okay, so these are low light shots, and honestly we are indeed working with a $200 phone. However, the night mode is the real appeal of the handset. Without it, the photos are nothing to write home about. The colors will feel a bit too warm for my taste, but everything is definitely corrected by the night mode. The street light feel a bit too big at times, but luckily there's no ultra wide camera to spoil everything. So for example, this is a regular shot. It's pretty decent, but a bit too yellow for my taste. And then you want to see more of this building's facade, night mode, and you've got it with all the proper shading performed here. Not bad, even though some of the night mode shots, which by the way show you the sky, you cannot see the sky here, but you can see it here. They also create a slight painting effect, a watercolor effect, which some people may not enjoy. Now that I look at it again, the regular shots aren't bad as well, but the night mode takes it to a whole different level. So in the end, for a $200 phone, the night mode delivers maybe more than expected at this price. And if you want to talk about the video, traditionally, without looking at it, you'd say that the video shouldn't be pretty impressive considering the camera we're getting here, which is one I've already mentioned the handset it's present on. So let me start off with the stabilization test, which is this one here. And if properly watched on a large screen, you're definitely going to notice that every one of my steps is perceived as motion, so the stabilization isn't doing us any favor. The only good thing I can say here is that there is no refocusing and the only shakiness comes from my steps. So if you're walking a flatter terrain and working more slowly, you may even be happy with the result, but once again, not something to write home about. Now, if you're shooting videos in 4K, you're going to be noticing quite a bit of details. So that's pretty nice to see. Now, those details are perceived well. They're close to the Poco X3 NFC, which was a king in this area, compared by me with the Galaxy A71, which is pricier. So not bad. And also the colors, which define the photo experience, also define the video one. So this camera can definitely capture some realistic colors. Some hungry and angry birds here with a pretty nice texture. The sky tends to be a bit white, and surprisingly, digital zoom isn't half bad at about 2x. The microphone cannot face the wind, and here we have the selfie video, which is a bit ghostly, shaky, definitely not useful for vlogging, even though stabilization looks like it's okay. Watch this on a large screen and you'll see that you'll be less than impressed. Okay, and I tested full HD 60 frames per second video, which started with a bit of defocusing, but ended in a fine note. Most phones out there with overexposed full HD 60 frames per second video, not this one. It catches moving objects in a fine fashion and doesn't suffer from ghosting, motion blur or other problems. So colors and details are spot on. It's about 75 or 80% of the experience of the Poco X3 NFC, at least details wise. This is the low light sample. Not that bad, to be honest, but also not a record setter. Now the colors are well calibrated, there's enough brightness, but there's a bit of shakiness when walking around, and the street lights are a bit overblown. In the end, it surpassed its condition and fought phones which go past $300 or even $400, so that has to be admired. Also to be admired is the presence of an infrared emitter here at the top, and we also have FM radio, we also have the audio jack. This is a 5G phone, also with 4G, so connectivity is really well set up here. If you want details, once again, NFC, infrared, 3.5mm jack, 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi dual band, Bluetooth 5.1, USB-C 2.0 port at the bottom, and a microphone at the bottom and a microphone at the top for some pretty loud and clear calls. We also did a bunch of speed tests, so let's see what came out of that experience. We actually have the app installed here, and you can see all the results. Here we go. Now, in Wi-Fi, we got up to 267 megapsec in download and 361 megapsec in upload. And on 4G, we got up to 200 megapsec in downloads and 62.5 megapsec in the uploads. So I would say we're doing fine. Sadly, we only could test 4G and Wi-Fi, not 5G, but I'm definitely sure it can also handle that. Now, on the software front, I'm already biased, or what's the word for it, when you're bored of repeating something over and over again. That something is MIUI 12. I've shown it to you a bunch of times on a bunch of Xiaomi phones, so you should be familiar with it. Let's start with the security. So this fingerprint scanner here is unlocked like this. Place the finger and you're done. I also have the face unlock, so I can use the wrong finger and still properly unlock the phone when it recognizes my face, which happens pretty fast. MIUI 12 introduces the control center, which is copied from iOS and separated from the notification area. So there's that. Aside from that, we have the multitasking, which is shown like this in two columns. Xiaomi also provides you with an app drawer, which is optional and also separates apps in categories, which is something nice to see. You can also do split screen from here, and you also have a cleaner. Let's see what else. There's a bunch of bloatware. Quite a few apps are installed here, including games, but the categories will definitely help you navigate between them faster. In order to find other interesting things, well, you're going to have to go through the settings. There's quite a few of them. There's connectivity settings, lock screen, display, sound and vibration, home screen, wallpaper, password and security. There are more settings for permissions now with MIUI 12, an extra emphasis on security and privacy. You also have your full screen display, button shortcuts, quick ball, one-handed mode, so you can definitely mimic a smaller diagonal. And the special features, gamers actually get a surprising amount of options here, customizations and features like do not disturb or customizations of the screen experience. There's the video toolbox, there's the floating window for an extra layer of multitasking, and there's a light mode for people just getting started in the world of smartphones. Okay, so this is pretty much it. I think we reached the end of the review and one of the most useful apps on board, aside from the fact we have Google Assistant available from the get-go. One of the most useful apps is called Security, and it does a bunch of things. Cleaner, security scan, boost speed, boost battery, manage apps, deep clean, Facebook cleaner, problem solver. It's basically your one-man band solving every problem you could have with this handset. Okay, so we here at gsm1.com have finished the review of the Redmi Note 9T, a budget 5G phone with a MediaTek Dimensity CPU. We have the pros and cons. On the pro side, it's a comfy phone, which you will definitely not drop because it's grippy. At the same time, is rather cheap, affordable for most people in most countries. And I should probably also mention that the CPU is solid, maybe even above expectations. We have a pretty well calibrated display color-wise. The battery is good. We have stereo speakers which deliver stereophony. We also get 5G connectivity, infrared, good colors and details for the pictures and videos. The selfies looked okay, that's the word for it, okay. MIUI 12 can be appealing for some people, definitely with the latest Oxygen OS, which is not that great. It's a solid option. Fast connectivity and FM radio and infrared are pluses. On the cons side, if you want to talk about things which could have been improved, well, I should probably mention the generic design in the end, with a pretty large punch hole and a big chin. And also the fact that the screen is not that bright, especially outdoors, and gets a weird tint if seen from an angle. The charging takes long, the speaker at the bottom doesn't have much bass. We don't have an ultra-wide camera, we don't have a telephoto camera, and the macro camera doesn't deliver a stellar experience. The sky is white in most pictures, videos are shaky, and the selfie video was rather poor. And also we're rocking Android 10, not Android 11, even though it's January and now February 2021. The end is clear here. The fact that we're getting a camera which is above expectations, a pretty solid battery, stereo speakers and a 5G phone, all of those for around $250 is not bad. However, there's also the Motorola Moto G 5G to consider, with a battery which looks a bit better on paper and a camera which is, I would say, similar to this one, maybe compensating here and there. It's a very tough battle, it's a very tough battle between the two, which will be decided by, honestly, the interface. So you're going to be choosing between this one and the Moto G 5G based on interface and maybe some benchmarks. They're very close in battery, they're very close in the camera, so what can separate them? Maybe the format, the screen, the gaming features, I don't know. I for one tend to like MIUI 12, but some people prefer a clean Android. The selling points of this phone that I have here are the quality pictures and videos in details and color, the fast connectivity, the good continuous usage of the battery, and also the fact that it's pretty easy to wield, doesn't go into crazy diagonal territory. This is from gsm1.com. Hope you enjoyed the review of the Redmi Note 9T. Bye bye.